is right now. Do you hear the complete lack of fan?
It's awesome. Yeah,
It's
I've
so
definitely
good.
noticed. Yeah.
And here we are for another episode of Dualistic Unity Raw Sunday Edition. I love Sunday episodes, especially right now, because I will admit I don't really have a day off. Like, I have days when we're talking to people on the podcast and talking to people in our groups, and then I have days where I'm doing everything else that contributes to the podcast. And this has been a few of those days for me. We have had interviews. We have done changes. We have discussed campaigns. We have had strategy meetings with our administrative team. And I know this is all sounding very important, which is, I guess, kind of the fun of it, because all that means is that we got really high and we sat down with some cool people and talked about ideas about what we could do moving forward. We have brought on some fantastic sales agents who have a diverse range of skills. They're going to be helping us in selling some of the advertising spaces that we have on our incredibly large podcast, which has now over an audience of over 15,000 people, which I am very excited to say that there are 15,000 people regularly just going through the episodes right now. Maybe talking to people on our Discord or participating in the groups. And so we're just really excited about all this momentum. That said, in a few days, I'm going to be seeing Andrew again in Vancouver for our Vancouver mini retreat, which is sold out. And then we have one ticket left for our Vermont retreat. And I highly recommend that if you want to come and hang out with us in a mini retreat, not a 9-day full retreat, but a 4-day retreat from Thursday night to Monday morning, the Vermont retreat's going to be just epic. It's in this very woodsy cabin. I'm stoked. There's a pond, there's some benches, there's a nice area around there to go for walks. There's a pool table. I believe I saw a ping pong machine, not a ping pong machine, a pinball machine. It's just going to be an awesome location. There's a hot tub. We're going to be chilling out, smoking joints, talking, getting as deep as we can, and more importantly, just being there with you. So if you are looking for an exercise in presence that is about as lighthearted as it could get, and it involves cool people from the community, I can't recommend the Vermont retreat enough. It's going to be so much fun. There is one ticket left.
Yeah, absolutely stoked for that. And we got the Vancouver one coming up next week. And yeah, it's I'm especially stoked just because I don't know. Things have it's interesting riding these sorts of waves out and being able to talk about them as often as I'm able to, and that's been the beauty of all of this, of the podcast, of doing content, of just being willing to share more and more. But it's yeah, I'm so excited for the next retreat because like my perspective on those have changed a lot in the last couple of days. Like I straight up I don't even know where to start with it, but I straight up felt
I
like
have an idea.
yeah, let's do it. Whatever you
Okay. So we were talking about this the other day, and what I thought was funny is, so Andrew and I recently started a new series called Being High with Dualistic Unity. And part of the best, or rather, yeah, I would say the best part of that series to me is the fact that we smoke big joints before we record the episodes. And we record ourselves smoking those big joints before we record the episodes. And so we are very high throughout the episodes. Well, we recorded 2 of those episodes back to back the other day on the heels of a fantastic Patreon call and a social episode earlier in the morning. This was on Thursday. And it was just a really good day of insight and relaxation. And by the end of that day, Andrew summarized it thusly: that he had realized that relaxing or relaxation meant more than just relaxing the body. Because we were knee deep in the discussion of how when you look for the thought, it's there, because the looking for and the creation of the thought, in fact, go hand in hand. And so if you're not careful, if you're not relaxed, you find yourself in this mess, this quagmire of thoughts, and you're not sure how to make them go away. And so you keep looking, and there are more thoughts every time you look. This is why it's important to relax. I think that's a good place to start.
Great, great place to start. And it's funny because you're even reminding me of I forgot how baked we got Thursday. Like, we filmed 2 of those fucking episodes where I was, high off. I'd forgotten just because yesterday so much, but it was a culmination. It's like, oh my God, seeing like the kind of waves of things and the buildup of things and the necessity of certain shitty things you got to go through, and then see it culminate from another point of view, and just how seamless everything is, like, all the time. And the experiences is, oh man, it's really, really kind of mind blowing. And so, so I think, and it's funny because even so, let's even start. I won't go too far back, but that interview run I did, for those of you who saw it on social media, there was a feeling I had going into it. Like, I really had a great time on it. Like, I wasn't concerned going into it, but like leading up to it, I knew it was gonna, her videos get a decent amount of views, and so I knew it was like an opportunity, but to share certain things, and I got a little bit too caught up in trying to figure out the best way to say something to get it across, as opposed to just being the embodiment of it. Just being the embodiment of the state of relaxation that comes from, some of the things we talk about. And so everything went fine, but it was so, oh fuck, I'm even realizing it now, like how much, because of the buildup and the expectation, there was like, during it, I really wasn't thinking about it at all during it. I was just enjoying it. But then afterwards, I was ruminating on the things I said and thinking, oh, I could have said this differently, could have said that differently, could have said this better, worse, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, she posted the video later, and like everything I was worried about coming across, like none of it actually ended up happening. And so it was just the rise and the fall of that concern was like very, very interesting. And the idea of coming up with the right way to say it, and that's kind of been an underlying desire for me for a while, was like figuring out the perfect way to get the point across, which isn't it, like to get these words across. And so what's absolutely fucking fucked is every time you're trying to come up with the right thing to say, the right way to say it, the clearest way to say it, you are stressed. You are tense. I had an underlying tension, stress, probably fucking at all times for the last for my entire life, basically. And it's not to say it isn't still there now. And I know it's just like the shift is what I'm feeling now, and it feels like a lot, and I'll get more used to it and whatever. There's always some tension, but the underlying tension that I had just from this conversation, and wanting to say it in the quote unquote best way, figure out the clearest way. And I even brought it up on a call after I did that interview. It was like my thought going through it, I probably have the note in my notebook somewhere, was like, what's the best way to get this across? Like, I wrote that down. Like, what's the best way to say it? Like, I'm having a tougher and tougher time saying it. And that, fuck, I'm realizing that now too, is like, I felt like a year ago, I didn't have as tough of a time getting it across, because it was for me, it was basic, it was small, it was like confined. And so it was like always that. And it was like a little circle I was focused on. So when someone would ask me, it was like, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, that. Even before Dualistic Unity, before I recognized that I'm not what I think, and any of that sort of those initial shifts, I still, it was getting like easier for me to, it felt, at least for me, like there was an ease to responses. Like someone had a response, oh, I had my go-to response. And so the last couple months, I've almost had a harder and harder time describing what the podcast is, to the point that, like, the last couple of weeks, when someone would ask me what Dualistic Unity is, I'd straight up say, I don't know. I don't, like, I had almost, and I would try, and then I would, I rarely did that, but sometimes I would. And in my head, I was doing it. But when I would, when I would talk to someone, like, I would just say it in whatever way it came up. And because I had this underlying idea that there was a perfect way to say it, perfect way to get it across, clearest way to say it, I was trying to find that. I was, I've been constantly trying to find that for like the whole fucking podcast. Basically, I've been trying to find that point of like crystal clear, perfect, get it across. You can just say it and someone gets it. And what has hit me in the last couple days is that that anytime you're trying to describe it, you're not being relaxed. You're not embodying what you're talking about. If anytime you're trying to teach someone, anytime you have any desire, any want for someone to get something in a certain way, there is some degree of stress or tension, and you're not embodying the relaxation that you're talking about, the state of relaxation. And so that's something I didn't even realize, I don't know, for the last couple of months, was like, what's even the benefit? Like, I can say the words really well, but I almost like wasn't realizing what the benefit to any of it was. And it really is just relaxing. Like, it really just comes down to relaxing. So what hit me last couple of days was that me relaxing is me relaxing. Like, as I relax, I relax. And anytime I'm trying to get another iteration of me somewhere, I'm not relaxed. And so I'm not as relaxed as a whole. And so all it is relaxing. Like, there's no way to say it. And anytime you're trying to say it in a specific certain way, you're not embodying it. And when you relax, you just kind of say shit and you're like dropping seeds. And this is the first time I'm even fucking realizing that what that is, just like saying shit, no desire for anything whatsoever. And because it's the priority is you, the embodiment, and like my interactions the last couple of days have been fucking so different. I can't even like believe it. It's so anyway. Yeah.
Well, that's how you know you're doing well. For sure. No, I get it, man. I said 22 years ago ish, there has to be a way. There has to be a syntax. There has to be a word. Like, there has to be a way of talking that can get across to anyone, regardless of their belief, regardless of their class, regardless of how much wealth they have, regardless of anything, regardless of their race. Doesn't matter. There should be a way to get across to people. And so I understand. And the problem isn't that it's a bad intention by any means. It's that we're so naive. Like, we really want it to be that simple, that there's just a way to express this, the right words, the right arguments, the right things to say. And the reason we want it to be that simple is because, frankly, the alternative is changing ourselves. That, in fact, it's everything you do, from your body language to your general state of being, to your tone, to how fast you're breathing because you're either stressed and panicked or not. It all makes an impact on everything that you do and every ripple that you make in an invisible and fucking magical way. Frankly, I was talking to somebody recently about this, about the fact that people treat me differently now because I do not take things personally. And at first, those relationships, had to adjust because people are used to you taking things personally. But after time, as you just don't anymore, people start to relax around you because they're not afraid of you lashing out or becoming defensive or needing to protect yourself. Like, you don't take things personally. And so what happens is that they let down their guard. And suddenly they start talking to you about things that they never would have talked to you before had you been trying to make them talk about it, had you been digging for it, had you been trying to teach them something. It's just the fact that you're at ease. That's all it is. You're at ease, and it's kind of an indicator that they can also be at ease just because the environment has shifted, because you're the environment. And before you know it, there are doors that are open for both of you that were never open before and that you couldn't fucking see. It's straight up magic.
It's fucking gnarly. Like, it's that difference. Like, it's like I'm seeing things differently. Like it things look different almost. Like, it's because every moment there's the opportunity to relax. And even as you're getting, worked up, tense, stressed, whatever, it's like you can find a spot to relax. And it's always like from moment to moment, we're kind of relaxing or stressing, and we're scaling between those. And as you relax, like, I don't know if I've ever been relaxed is kind of how I feel right now. Like, I don't know if I've ever been relaxed my entire life. I think yesterday was the first time I was relaxed ever. Like, and I
It's
can
probably been
see,
a while. You've had
like,
moments of it, I guarantee it. It's just whether it was conscious relaxation or the result of the environment allowing it to happen, right? Because that's the thing, is that that's what we all pine for. This is why we're all so fixated on changing our external, right? It's because we've had moments of relaxation where everything was just perfect. The environment was lovely. But often it's in childhood, for example, when our parents took us out on a camping trip or something like that, where we were sitting in the backyard and lying down on the grass with the dog, that kind of thing. But it was the environment facilitated that. The point is that we don't have to wait for the environment to facilitate that. But there's that responsibility again. Now it's not as simple. You'll notice how much of this we just want it to be simplistic, this one step to a concept of victory, and then it's over. That's really all we want it to be. But at the end of the day, there's so much gray area and nuance. All you can do is relax. It's the only thing that makes sense.
yeah, because as we buy into the idea that we can control it, it's like it's like in the sense that it's just an illusion, in the sense that it isn't even doing anything that we think it's doing. Like, trying to get someone somewhere or trying to make something happen in a certain way is not at all beneficial towards it happening in that way. And I think that's a component that I still was holding on to, was like trying to get, like, there was some benefit to that, but it's actually just sucking you back, like pulling you away. It's always just the fucking relaxation. And like, to see other people's interactions too. Like, a lot of shit for me has been coming up from, like, when I was in elementary school. Like, I think that might be the last time I was fully relaxed. Like, it's almost as if once the idea started to get built, once that started to happen, there was like a journey. And as soon as
You
there's a
mean you mean
journey,
being tested every once in a while by strangers and measured up against other kids isn't relaxing?
right? It's like, as soon as there's as soon as there's any journey, like, there's tension, right? Like, that's kind of fucked, because that's with any goal, like any goal that you take very seriously and like need to get there, and manifesting all this shit is like, it's not just that you're reinforcing lack with like the manifestation stuff. It's like you're not allowing yourself to be relaxed until that happens. It's like there's a tension that's always there. Always, if you're trying to get somewhere. Like, it's even the tiniest little bit. And I'm sure there will be responses to this like, oh, well, you can be relaxed and try and get somewhere at the same time. And it's like, no, I think those don't go together. Like, you can't have both. You can't be trying to get somewhere that you're not and be relaxed. You can't be trying to convince something of something you feel like they don't understand and simultaneously be relaxed. You can't try and be relaxed. It's like
You can
it's a
just do.
exactly.
Yeah, that's it, right? This is what I was saying before, and this is a conversation we were having in one of our recent meetings with our advertising sales agent. Was dreaming without need or expectation. Like, it's just the same with life. Like, pick a direction. Don't need the end result. Don't need the end result. That's the whole thing. Like, you don't need to try and get to an end result. You can go, I'm going to go in that direction for as long as you want to. Right. And then if you decide to move in a different direction, you can move in a different direction. But it's very much a fluid thing as opposed to trying to get somewhere, because that always comes from you trying to be something. right? That's where that try, comes in and becomes this conceptual thing, because you can never really try, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. That was one of the earliest sales lessons I ever had in my life, was from some old guy who's like dropped a pen on the ground. He's like, try and pick that up, right? So you go to reach over. He's like, no, I told you to try and pick it up, not pick it up. Right? Because if you're trying, you're not actually doing anything. You can either do it or don't do it. Trying is just a way of making an excuse for not doing it. And so that's it. We can live that way. We can live in the moment. We can dream of things without needing them. For the dreaming itself is changing us, making us more aware of possibilities, of opportunities, of things that may open as doors later on down the road. Who knows? But you don't have to hold on to them for that to be the fact. You can just be aware that they're there. So what I was saying about manifestation, and I do want to give a shout out to our manifestation series that we did very early in the podcast. It is not about how. I think that is the biggest mistake that people make in their lives, is trying to figure out what they want in their life and how that's going to happen, right? Or they'll dream about something and then they've got to logically figure out, how am I going to get there? Don't do that. Just dream of things. Let it go. Maybe it's a possibility. Maybe it's not. But if it is a possibility, you have no idea how that shit's going to happen. Don't limit it. Don't think that you could possibly know all of the ways any one thing could happen in your life. All you're doing is narrowing it down so that way you can't see the opportunities as they pass by your view. So just don't do that. Don't worry about the how. Just carry on.
Yeah, and the focus on the how just takes your attention out of the spot that you're in. Like, if you're focusing on the journey at all, or how it's gonna happen, it's like you're focused on something that isn't happening. You're missing all of the things happening right now. And there's a degree of prioritization as well, just like a prioritization of you here now. Like, your experience here and now is, as many people, talk about that like, you have to prioritize your experience here and now. It's like there's there's never anything else. And it's not to say that you have to change the situation, but it does just come down to your willingness to relax. And it's weird how this is hitting me, because I don't mean for it to come across like just relax, but like, kind of. And it's interesting how people get very triggered, right? When you say, hey, just relax. You're like, don't tell me to relax. And like, that's kind of interesting, right? How people respond so viscerally to a short little phrase like that. Just relax, hey, you can relax. And they're like, don't tell, and they get it, like, sends them people, and I'm not saying everyone. Sometimes people are like, yeah, you're right. But I guess, I don't know, there's like a condescending tone to it, or there can be, or is that just how we can perceive it sometimes, if we don't want to look at how not relaxed we are, if we don't want to look at how stressed we are, we just buy into it.
That's really interesting, because I mean, in those states, we are so caught up in our mentality that we're really not thinking. Like, there's very little awareness and responsibility when you really are worked up about something, whether you're afraid or you're angry or you're anxious, or whatever it might be. You're really caught in your identity, and you're really caught in your idea of yourself. And so in those states, as we lack awareness and sensitivity, it's like the mentality becomes its own thing. Because you'll notice that everybody in a certain mentality of anger kind of acts the same, right? And it's because the mentality itself is kind of predictable, in the same way that the ego as a mentality is very predictable, in terms of it always needing something. It always needs to validate. It always needs, to adjust the external. It's never necessarily responsible for its own state of being, that kind of thing. And so in that state of mind, it's almost like you're dealing with the mentality rather than the awareness of the person. And so that mentality cannot relax, because to do so would end its dominance in the moment. Right? If the mentality were to suddenly relax, it would lose its grip on that person, and that person would suddenly be free of it to change. And so relaxation is actually a threat to our attention. It's a threat to our ego. As soon as we hear it, we're like, no, because otherwise I'd have to change. Otherwise, this might slip away and I may not feel as justified in losing my shit, because right now I feel totally justified because I'm confused and wrapped up in my story. If I relax, I may become more reasonable.
Damn. I mean, that makes sense. Like, relaxation is a threat. And so that's why it's such a yeah, I don't think I've ever really understood relax. And you've said this before. You're like, there's like a difference between it's like no, but like there's the idea of yeah, relax, but then there's like relax, and that's what you brought up before was like it's not just a physical thing. And I think for me, that's what it's always been. Like when I hear relax, I'm like, all right, drop my shoulders a little bit. But it's like relaxing is not trying to get somewhere. Relaxing is not trying to get someone else anywhere because you can't do both. Like, and that's been the beauty of this too, is when things come up, it's just like it's ultimate. It's like a two-way influence because you know that as you relax. And there's a lack of division that is always being impacted by your mentality, what you're embodying. And so as you relax, all of you, reality itself relaxes. And then at the same time, you relaxing cultivates an environment that is more relaxed. And so all of a sudden you're interacting with more relaxed people, not because you know, not control. It's like, because it's impacting each other. Like their relaxation allows for yours, allows for, because it's not yours. It's just a, a thing that's not even a thing, but it's because there is no you in control. It's just you embodying based on how much you recognize you're just you here, and that's all you got. So there's like an insane beauty to that. Like all I have to do is relax, and then things play out. And it's like that initial recognition changes your view on things. Like, and then it's like relax and do. It's like relax and do. And then the doing just makes way more sense. It's way from a different spot. And so it just plays out more perfectly than you trying to get anyone anywhere. Because there's like you got some blinders on. You're missing so many components. But when you're relaxed, it's like you're kind of taking them all in, but there's no desire to do anything. So it's just kind of like, here's some words, and they come out. Here's some thoughts. It's like, have you ever thought about it like this? Oh, I totally get that. But like, here's another way of looking at it or something. But there's no intent. It's the intent. Like, that's what I am just realizing for the last, I don't know, for the whole podcast. There's been an intent as I'm talking. And it's, yeah, it's not, it's just different. It feels different.
Yeah. Well, this is the road. This is going to be fun. I've really enjoyed that. So we've talked about this before. I've tried so many different things over the years to try and get this conversation going. I've tried to share this mentality. I've tried to find the words. I've tried to, start different projects online and otherwise. Like I dozens of attempts. And it wasn't until finally I came to terms with the fact that nobody needs saving, that there's nobody to convince, that life, the experience of living in itself, is enough if I just get out of the way enough to enjoy it. And doing that, all of a sudden my life started to open up. And we talked about this in the manifestation series, but we've talked about this in a couple other things. Like things just became uncanny, like in just the ease with which things started to happen. Like all of a sudden, Melissa had to move to a different city for her university, and I was an entrepreneur in the city that I lived in. All of a sudden, I had 30 days to move, and I had to drop all my clients and no way to move to the city with an income. I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? Instead of panicking, I relaxed. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a company I'd never talked about. They hired me as a remote worker. I ended up making like 80,000 a year in this new city, and it just happened like that. And then after working for that company, same thing. Reached out to another company, literally said in the resume, if you hire me, you'll never regret this. Just being you know, as brass and honest as I can, or as brash and honest as I can. And they did. They hired me. No references, none of that. I just worked for them for the longest time. And then after that, well, during all of that, this Dualistic Unity. And all of this has happened. All of it's taken root. The conversation has grown. People have interacted with me in a different way ever since I just stopped trying to get them there. This was something that really came across when I was teaching Wing Chun to people. The person that you see right now is the person that you really saw come to develop in Wing Chun. And then after Wing Chun, it was in working with people in life coaching. And it was just the recognition that I don't need to try and get them anywhere. If they want to get there, they're already doing it. The only thing I can do is stop being a fucking hindrance, right? Which means to stop trying to modify their path for them, right? But to actually take where they are and just be as much of the environment as I can, you know, to align with their path as much as possible. And that's not an effort. That's what happens when I get out of the way. And that changed how I talk to everybody. It's changed how you and I have interacted since the very first conversation that we had. And it's changed the podcast for me. And what's amazing about all of this, as Dualistic Unity really starts to grow now, again, 15,000 people in our audience. It's fucking bizarre. It's all a result of just me relaxing and the conversation being about the fact that you can relax, and the conversation being about the fact that our listener can relax, that you are enough, that your idea of yourself is in fact causing most of your stress and panic and fear. And underneath all of that, you can just be you. And from that, look at all the momentum. From the fact that there is no destination, look how much potential is building. And that's what it is. I always compare it to light bulbs. And I did so in Discover Transcendence. I'll throw the QR code for Discover Transcendence. But we are like a battery. We have so much potential energy. But all of these thoughts, all of these narratives, all of these ideas of ourselves and the world and everyone else, what's possible, what's not, what we need, what we don't, where we're going, all that stuff. It's just, you're just adding light bulbs to the battery, and all of them start going dimmer as a result. And so you feel confused and you can't see anything. And you're like, why? I've got all these fucking light bulbs. Not recognizing that none of them are working at peak efficiency because none of them have your full attention. For them to have your full attention, you have to let go of all the other light bulbs and relax into being the battery. And then in all that potential energy, there is a light that comes from that. You don't need the bulbs. You don't need all the thoughts. You are potential. We are potential. Dualistic Unity is an expression of potential because I don't know where the fuck this is going, and neither do you. And we don't want to. We just want to keep doing it because it's fun.
Oh man, it's unreal, like, every time that how much there's words that you've said in the past that finally make sense. It's like, I think I know what they mean. I think I know what you're saying. And it's like, I do to the degree that I can, right? Every time. But there's like like,
Me too.
I cannot fucking get across how different this feels of like, and just the recognition of how badly I wanted there to be someone to convince. Like, I wanted there to be someone else to convince but myself. And that's it. And then it's just, there's not like even the direction, even just like this, the conversation. It's like there's a right way to box it up. There's a right way to say it. And it's like, and I haven't understood like what it's like I haven't understood what it comes down to with the relaxation. Like, what all the conversations, all the words, just relax. It's already happening. There's nothing wrong with you that you have to fix. There's no spot that you have to get to in order to be more. Like, I've said that shit a bunch of times, and there was still like a subtle feeling, despite like, I don't know. I felt like I conceptually, I felt like I got that like there's nowhere to go, but then it's not even a directional. It's like all encompassing nowhere to go, and that's a lot. Like, there's a lot that digs, that reinforces and kind of builds that idea that there's somewhere to get someone else, to get someone, somewhere to get someone else, like somewhere else to get. And because there's even the underlying sort of thing that if you convince them, then that's better, right? It's like better if they get it. Oh, so then there's something on the line. And there's tension, then there's a desire, there's a stress, and then you're not relaxed. And so I've been having conversations with people, not relaxed at all, trying to like get this point across. No wonder it's been tougher to like come up with a phrase because like I'm tense
I will
trying to come.
disagree with that. I will disagree with that, and I will disagree with that because you're looking at it from the current standpoint rather than looking at it through the whole spectrum. Okay, so when I met you, you were far less relaxed, far less relaxed. Okay? And you are in fact more relaxed and have been progressively ever since then. And I know you were on that path before meeting me, but since I've met you, I've watched you gradually settle more into yourself, which is what's led you to this point, right? And that's kind of the thing, is that the relaxation thing, the insight that you are yourself is, or that there is no need for the end result, there's no lack that you're trying to solve, that you really can just act, that you actually can just be will embodied. It's all the same fucking lesson. It's the same lesson I'm trying to learn. It's the same lesson I'm learning, and there's no difference here. You and I and everybody else on this journey is learning a deeper respect for exactly how much they are. And in order to do that, there's greater and greater and greater degrees of relaxation, which also means greater and greater degrees of surrender. And that's the reason that you cannot rush this. That's the reason that every time you're like, I've got it, give a little giggle, because there's so much to this. And who's the I that you're talking about? Right. And there's your glimpse of the collective path, or at least the potential of that collective path. And so you have to remember that the reason this used to seem simpler to explain was because, frankly, your view of it was simpler. It was less nuanced. The more your awareness expands, the more you've got to consider. That's why your videos started getting more complex. You're like, well, there's this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And that's the reason, is because your awareness has expanded. So all of a sudden now you want to have a nice simple answer for something that's all fucking gray area. And it's impossible, which is why you've seen in my videos, I'll say things like, it helps to remember that your anxiety wouldn't be so bad if you weren't afraid of it. Nudge. It's just a little poke. I'm not trying to get the whole point across. I'm saying, like, just this will ripple in everything else you do. I don't need to get them home. They are home. It's just that they can't see it because they're so caught up. So it's just nudging them towards relaxation one little bit at a time, and then watch it play out, and it unravels everything else. And there's another level that's available, another layer of relaxation. It's all we're ever going through. That's all this fucking is. All of this conversation is just a reminder. You can relax a bit more. You can relax a bit more. And that's always the case, because you always can.
Yeah, it almost felt like with that building, and we talked about it too, like trying to, like, I couldn't keep my videos short anymore because there was just so much. So it was like that perspective was expanding with the idea that there was a right way of getting it across. It's like, fuck, the right way of getting it across, there's a lot to fucking include. And then it's like, it pops. And then it's like, oh yeah, there isn't a right way. And all of this was like tension, as a ball gets, blown up more and more and more before it pops, it's like at peak tension, right? And then it pops, and then it relax. And again, even now I'm catching myself because like now I'm thinking of like relaxation is the answer. And like I know it's not that, but it's like a component of that. And I know that right now it's like this is a wave of whatever. And it's not to say put your guard up, like, you're in for a lot more shit, but it's just relax. And because that is what it comes down to, is when that shit comes up, it's like you can remain relaxed and handle it, but there's a lot of faith in yourself that comes with that, like relaxation and faith in yourself, because there's not control in that. Like there's and the realization of how fucking deep that goes. Like the lack of control is it was alarming yesterday when I was on 50 milligrams of THC, that's for sure. But yeah, like I started, and I don't know, talk about this at some point a little bit more, but yeah, I started getting this chant that was like, there is no control. There is no control. Like a ancient sort of celebration thing or ceremony thing. And it was like the gong beats. And I'm just like, and I was running at the time and like barely. And I was like, oh, there is no control. There is no And it was just like ringing through my ears for like 4 or 5 minutes. And it was, and then it was like all fears coming in, and then but it wasn't just fears, it was everything, and just how little there was in control. Like there's nothing in control. Like there is no certainty whatsoever. But I don't know. I guess it's like another sort of layer got peeled back of that recognition, and there's, infinite more. But it was just another realization, which comes with, when you relax through that, deeper relaxation as well. Like they go hand in hand. It's like all ends of the spectrum come together, like at the same time, the degree of the peak to the degree of the trough. And then it's like, oh yeah, there is no spectrum. It's just infinite potential. And it's like, can you remain relaxed? Like how much can you realize or see or look at and remain relaxed? And I think that's kind of what it's been. And the more you can see and be relaxed, the deeper the relaxation. And I think I just wasn't, I don't know, seeing as much. And I even say an I, like I know, but like,
Well,
and
now
so
you
that was,
get to go through other stuff. See, now
yeah.
you get to go interact with all of your friends. You get to go and travel and go into new places and do all the same things that you've been doing to some degree, but with entirely different appreciation of relaxation, which I find really funny because if you remember, I think it was last week, you were talking about recently hanging out with your friends and having this like kind of going back and forth, and then realizing later on, like, I don't really need to do that. And that was kind of a prelude to this insight that you're on right now, is the recognition I don't need to convince anybody of anything. And then that settles in a little bit. Now it's settled in a bit more. Now you're going to go into other conversations. You're going to be on other podcasts. You're going to have other conversations, and you're going to have to apply this because your old habit of trying to argue is still there. Your old habit of thinking that there's the right way to put this is still there. Now you have to relax past that, right? And that's the point. And so you just keep going along this until your responses to everything change, right? Because you're learning relaxation, you're remembering relaxation, and you're recognizing that there is a power to just being yourself, right? But it's all just deepening that appreciation and then watching it play out. Integration, application, recognition, all part of the same goddamn thing.
Jesus fucking Christ. Like even thinking about like any interactions like that, it's so funny, the fucking like looking at a sort of crest and wave and like all that shit, like looking back, because I hung with some friends I hadn't seen in a while and in New York when I was there. And there's a couple times where it was like, and it was, there's one friend specifically who loves just like pushing my buttons and trying to like disprove things, you know, I've talked about in the past. And so we went at it twice, two different times. And there was like, definitely wasn't fucking relaxed during that. And there was still that desire to convince, like desire. And it's just my desire to hold on to the idea that there's someone else to convince. And it was my own avoidance of the recognition that it wasn't about the words. It's like, as long as I kept making it about the words, as long as I kept, arguing, or not even necessarily arguing, debating, conversing about it with an intention of changing someone, I was avoiding the recognition that it's not the words. I was avoiding the recognition beyond the words, it's just what you embody. It's just seeing what you are. Like if you actually recognize that it's just you, then you relaxing has far more impact than you trying to convince, because you trying to convince isn't convincing someone of the recognition of relaxation. It's convincing someone of the words, because that's the only way and it's not to say that you can't have pointers, but that's why there's like an intention behind it. And so it really is, fuck, it's like Ray said it so many times, it's like where it comes from has to be the priority. Because if it's not, it is just words. Because if it's just words to you, it's just words to you, the you that you're talking to. And so if you recognize that it's not words, the words change. It's not about the words, but my desire to get it across, and especially just seeing the fucking buildup and like the perfect fucking symbolism of shit happening. Like, I wasn't planning on that New York trip was just like a last minute, booking because I was like, oh, I haven't been for a while and whatever. And there was a number of interactions that I had that were a component of this. And it's not to say, things happen for a reason, but looking at things, it's just like fucking A. And it was just me wanting to avoid the recognition that it's not about the words. And it's like, there's been, I'm not going to be too hard on myself, but there's been an avoidance of that recognition my whole life. Like everything I've sort of done was like, it's been getting closer and closer to that recognition that it's not about the words or it's not about anything, and even the convincing of anything. And it's before I was having this conversation or whatever the fuck this is, it was other variations of the avoidance of relaxation through trying to get somewhere through being able to maintain the story. But that has been a huge avoidance. It's like that was me just avoiding that, circling around it, but also that's a necessary component of it too. So it's not like there's anything wrong, I guess. But
I wouldn't say that it's so funny how we translate things personally, right? Like we take the fact that we're circling around this as, avoiding it. And that's certainly how it feels. But what are we talking about again? We're talking about ourselves. We're talking about like the whole. We're not just talking about Andrew and Ray, right? And so there's a collective movement towards relaxation. And so we're doing the best we can in that. Like we're all rising on the tide together to various degrees. And here we are going like, oh, I'm avoiding the end. I'm avoiding where the tide is going. It's like, no, it's just you're not there yet. Like you can't actually get there yet because it's not just you. You're not in control. That's the whole point. Part of the relaxation is the recognition of unity. It's the recognition of wholeness. It's not that you're avoiding the insight that it's not about the words. It's that you and all of us are avoiding the recognition of unity. We're all avoiding the end of the identity party, right? Greed and envy and jealousy and control. The addiction of desire and want. All of that. It all goes hand in hand. It all goes hand in hand. It all comes from this fucking lack that we're so invested in, but we're invested in it collectively. It's not just individually. Right. And so we are also moving out of it collectively and individually because they're both the same thing.
and yeah, I mean, it's funny how quick I can be to like personalize something as I'm talking about something that's not, old habits die hard,
It's
whatever. But
important though. It is
it is,
important. You see, this is the
yeah.
thing. Like you look at it as like I'm avoiding this, and that's a hell of a motivator, right? Unless you judge yourself for it, in which case now you're going to remain there because you're judging yourself for it, right? But the recognition that there is something you could look at and haven't been is different than avoiding it.
Yeah, very true. And then just seeing it as all of me collectively avoiding the recognition of unity. Because even in that, like as you were talking, the idea of like, oh, but yeah, if they're all me, then if I say it in the right way, then it's going to help more of me. And but as soon as I do that, I'm not doing it. As soon as I do that, I'm not doing that. So there isn't a way to maintain, because this, I think it's super common just in this conversation. We have it all the time on Patreon of like, you know, oh, my friend, they're just like, they're not getting it. And I'm trying to convince them, or like my family is super stressed out, trying to get them to like not be so stressed. It's like you saying, I'm trying to get them, I'm trying to do this, is you not being relaxed, not being the thing that you're trying to get them to be, to get to understand. And there can't be both. Like, you can't try to convince someone else and be relaxed as you're doing it. You can be relaxed and say shit to someone else from a place of relaxation as an expression of the relaxation that you are. But that's entirely different, which I am just fucking realizing, than saying it with an intention. Like, there can't be a relaxation and an intention behind the words at the same time. Like, fuck. But and so in the recognition that it's the collective avoidance of unity, of like what we are, it's like you see yourself more as an expression, as a component of that recognition, as all of that recognition here now, but not the you that you think you are. And it's such a deep habit to like want to come back to yourself and like think it means something about you, but it's not. Like, you don't know what's happening. You don't know what you're going through. You don't know what's going on. So you can't judge in that spot. But you're you here now, and that's all you know, and that's a lot. And if you're interacting with you, then you relaxing is the best thing you can do. It's the best option when it comes to conversing, interacting, is just relax and then let it ride, like, and do shit and take action. But the relaxation, as that's maintained, there's a different tone to it.
This is faith. This is what we mean by faith. This. It's not just moving forward. It's moving forward without needing to feel like you're in control. Right? And that's all the thought is. That's all we're doing when we're creating all of this narrative, is we're just trying to feel like we know what the fuck's going on, what it means about us. We're answering so many questions that only exist because we create them.
Oh man, it's unreal. It's like
It's fun once you get it.
Yeah.
And by get it, I really just mean once you relax. Isn't that funny? Everyone's like, I'm getting it. Are you? Are you relaxing? Because that's what it is, right? It's just relaxing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness gracious. And so with just kind of a question in regards to cannabis, because that's been something we've been talking about a lot recently, and I have had a lot recently, and that has shaken me. And it's like, it can be overwhelming, but is that is that just like how tough of a time you have with cannabis, how much stress and tension you're maintaining and
Indeed.
trying to hold on to?
Correct. Right? That's pretty much it. And that can go a number of different ways. I mean, sometimes your body's just tired and you're so used to like pushing it with coffee and adrenaline all the time that you don't recognize how tired it is. And then all of a sudden you have some cannabis, your body relaxes, and you're like, oh my God, I forgot what this feels like. And then you go to sleep. There is nothing wrong with that. But you'll notice that when people get really high and the thoughts come in, they'll just find a way. They'll be like, I think I'm just going to go lie down, because they want to shut them down. They just want to shut those thoughts off. That's where that issue is coming from. It's the lack of relaxation. Because if you're relaxed, you don't give a fuck about your thoughts. Like, that's the thing. If you're relaxed, you don't give a fuck about your thoughts, even the worst of them, the most atrocious, right? You're just like, oh yeah, that's in there, right? But it's tension, taking things personally, trying to be in control, all of it. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, it's like, as that, because that was okay. So I didn't really fully mention that, but I ate 50 milligrams of THC yesterday, which is way more, almost pretty much twice as much as I've ever done. And it shook the fuck out of me. And it was just an overwhelm, but it was like, I knew I'd get through it. Also, the whole time there was like an underlying, like, this is fucking insane, like craziest, like deepest trip I've ever had, including mushrooms, including pretty much anything, is how it felt. And there wasn't, because as tough as it was, like, there wasn't I didn't run from them, I guess. Like, they were there and I knew it would, like, get through even, like, the worst of shit, because there was, like, really even fucking there's deeper stuff, which I know it's like there's fucking infinite deeper shit, and it's, like, not just Andrew shit, it's like there's shit, infinite, eternal shit, but it's like going back into even deeper and deeper stuff, and just how much of our, I don't know, trauma experiences come from just like subtle little nudges in certain directions from like when we're young, like when we're very young, like that it stays, like it stays and we build on it so for so long based on things that we couldn't have possibly comprehended. And it's like it's fucking crazy. Like even the tiniest little interaction from the playground in elementary school. Some little kid is like, having a tough time at home and they make fun of you and it changes the trajectory of your
You can't
life.
relax. That's what we're learning. That's what we keep learning. Don't relax. Be in control. Know what things are. Know where you're going. Have a plan. Know how people think about you. Know what your value is. All of it. It's all the opposite to relaxation. This is what trauma is. Trauma is the extreme lesson that you are not fucking safe. You must be on guard, that you cannot relax. All of this goes in the opposite direction to feeling that we are home, not that we're at home, that we are home ourselves. Because that realization requires us to relax so we can be safe in ourselves. That's the only way we can be. Until we are safe in ourselves, nobody appears safe.
Oh my God. It's like our whole lives we've been taught not to be relaxed. Like, and everything from like, when you're a kid, it's like as soon as something happens and there's a comment about something, it's like, oh, there's like a layer of tension that gets added because like, oh, I got to make sure I don't do that again. Oh, I got to make sure I don't say this like this again. Oh, I got to make sure this doesn't happen like this. And it's like, and that's where it starts, and then it's just built on, and it's like, because we think it means something about us. We think that means everything at the time. And so over time, it's like, we get judged for something else. We start judging ourselves for things. And then the judgment of ourself can be fucking infinite. It can be so many things. Can't do this, can't do that, can't do this. It's like layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. Don't do this, don't do that. You can't
Generationally.
act this way. For oh my God. And it's all like you can't relax. Like that's what I've been like with when I describe like weed and mushrooms now, it's just like they help you relax. And it's like we made that illegal. We made things that just help you relax illegal. It's fucking insane. I'm not going to go on a rant with that because I've been on plenty before, but that's gnarly. Like, that's so insane that we build this sort of society that is expression of our lack of relaxation. Like, must remain in control, cannot let go. Must remain in control, cannot let go. Can't just be myself. Can't just, I can't just say what comes to mind because
Yeah. This is what we keep talking about, that you can, in fact, let go. It's the only real question we're ever asking. Can I? Can I just let go? And our brain's like, no. Here's all the reasons. And that's all it is. It's just there are always reasons. That doesn't mean that you can't. Right? And in doing so, everything changes. Everything changes. But we are collectively in a state of trauma and stress. Like we are in a species wide state of PTSD. based on shit we've done to ourselves, and we don't recognize it because how could we? How could we? We can't relax enough to see anything. But there are certain things that relaxed people don't do. They don't go to war. They don't hoard. They don't try and take advantage of other people. They don't separate themselves from their community, right? And this is it, is so much of what we're doing collectively is the result of just being fucking stressed. And the reason we're so stressed is because we're divided from ourselves. We're in such a divisive state of mind that we actually think we're separate from life itself. Isn't it funny? Like somebody will say, like, "Oh, we're not the universe," and that's the fucking most hilarious thing because it's obvious you are. Like if you were to look at any other object and go, "That energy is the universe," they'd be like, "Yeah," but like, so are you. Oh no. And why do you think that? Other than the fact that you can. That's the point. You can think that. That doesn't mean it's the truth, but it's something you're going to cling on to if you're stressed and afraid because it feels like you're alone. It feels like you're separate. It's all the same path. This is why humility and faith are so important because they're all relaxation. That's all it is.
And the depth of like what comes from that, like you can just be yourself. Like it's so, oh my God. And like I'm really gonna try. I think I got all the tears out and stuff, but like it's a yeah, like that. Like yesterday, like I was saying, like I was fucking super fucking high all day. And like I was on a uh walk with my parents and I was realizing just I was in that spot of just like being relaxed. And it was like the way I was talking, the way I was acting, it was like and I've been getting the last few days, the last week, just like so many memories from being a kid and like uh being on the playground, just like being free and like having fun with friends and shit and just like playing. And it was like yesterday was the first time I felt that way where it was like a freedom because I was relaxed that I was just like saying what came to mind and just like being relaxed, but it was saying things that came to mind that were like sensitive to the situation. I was relaxed. It was just enough because there was nothing behind them. There was no intent. I didn't want anything out of anyone whatsoever. And I was freeing myself because I was relaxed. Like I didn't need anything else. Like I didn't need anything from anyone to help me feel any sort of way. So I didn't need validation. I didn't need, responses. I didn't need to convince anyone. I didn't need anything because there was no way for me to be more relaxed than I was. Like there wasn't anything to get like that prize of convincing or being right or being sure or being, looked at in a certain way wasn't there. And it was just hitting me like, holy fuck, there's been this underlying concern, tension, desire to be seen in a certain way. Like it's so there's so much to it, I guess. Like there's so many layers, and I know there's still plenty more, but like there's so much to that desire to be seen in a certain way because it's just the desire to be seen, the desire to maintain me, to want it to be about me, like to want it to mean something about this individual, separate little thing that I convinced myself that I was, that I am, that I'm like, and there's no way to do it. There's no way to get someone to look at you in a certain way. Like, the only thing you can do is relax. Like, there's no, like, we fear that lack of control, but it's the key. It's like so fucked how it's like this little keyhole, and it's like, it's so scary, but it's the unlock is that lack of control is where freedom is. Like, it's where the relaxation comes from is like, yeah, there's no way for me to control that. So I'm just going to do something. It's like, and there's a different energy behind it. It's like, oh man.
Sensitivity. That's what it is. All of a sudden you have sensitivity because you're actually listening. You're actually listening. Rather than pushing outwards, you're actually allowing yourself to take in everything that you've been the entire time. It changes how you interact with everyone because, again, this is why the retreats are such a powerful lesson and have been so educational for me, because the retreats are an exercise in just allowing myself to play the role that I'm playing. You'll notice whenever like at the first retreat, the first day, we were like, okay, what is it we're supposed to do? We're hosting this. Okay, so we had ideas of what hosting was, and then we quickly recognized from the pace, we quickly recognized from how everybody was acting that was not the way to go, that it was to relax. And now it almost appears like we are retreat goers ourselves. Like there is that little hierarchy in that experience. I think Rainer was saying that actually in the most recent episode that we released, the benefits, which I also find really funny because that right there was a conversation that we had about this specific thing, the product versus the benefit, right? The words versus the state of mind. And what you're doing now is you're showing the benefit. You're listening, you're receptive, you're empathetic, you're sensitive. These are things that are the benefit of this. The conversation is just, it's almost like, it's almost unfortunate that the conversation takes the limelight, like takes the spotlight, as it were, in this whole thing. Like, because this conversation's amazing. I feel very intelligent. I feel very conscious and very spiritual and blah, 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 blah. And they're not relaxed. And so while the conversation's settling in, they haven't figured out what that conversation's about. It's being in the know without knowing what it is.
Oh my God. That's exactly it. And like, oh my God. Like even like I've always looked at, and even at the retreats, like looked at, you know, just from the perspective, not from myself being relaxed, is myself being relaxed. Like that is it. It's always been like, oh, what's the best conversation to have, best way to say it? Like it's the conversation becomes the point. Like I think I thought that it was I thought that it was just the conversation, and like it's like the conversation with some benefits along the way, as opposed to the benefit with some conversation along the way. And it's the conversation is a product of the benefit.
In the same
And
way that
that's
the mushrooms aren't the point. Right? It's like,
exactly.
oh, we don't actually need mushrooms. Want to have some mushrooms? Right? And that's the only time that's when you get the most out of it, is when you don't need them. It's the same thing with the conversation. We get more out of this conversation when it's not trying to drive towards some fucking conceptual utopia. When we are actually where we are, then the conversation becomes what it's supposed to be, or rather what it has the potential to be, which is about the present, because it is in the present, not trying to get to the present.
And it's just being like it's just being it yourself, like being willing to be it yourself. It's just the willingness. And then and it's like the will, I don't know. Is it the willingness that deepens not the control but the ripple? Like it's always, and it's almost like, I don't know, like a smaller rock drops in a, or it drops, I don't know, less high. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. It's like if it's the same rock, it's dropped from 6 inches, above the water. It's like there's a ripple. But then if it's dropped 6 feet, then it goes deeper, and then there's a bigger ripple there. And like, is like that combo of the willingness to be relaxed, the recognition of yourself, kind of go back and forth hand in hand as you go. Like the more relaxed, the more you see, like the more willing you are to be it, the more willing you are to be it, the more you relax, unless some concerns comes up for your conceptual idea, and then it switches it. But it's always that subtle concern for something that you're not, that the relaxation ceases to a degree and the depth ceases to a degree. So it's like relaxing is the doorway to that. And that's where
it changes. That's where it changes. You know, it's funny you used a word there, being willing, and that's a very significant part of it. It's almost like, you know, the thrust for a rocket ship to get into space, right? Like being willing is and off you go, right? After a certain point, it's not about will, it's about acceptance of what you've been avoiding the whole time. Isn't it funny that the will is only when you're trying to get somewhere, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, fuck, I'm already there. And then the rest is accepting it and letting the gravity of that take you in. Right. And that's all we're doing after a certain point, is just letting it sink in. And that's where I'm at, is the fact that I'm not trying to get somewhere. I'm just accepting I'm always there. There's nowhere to go. You know, there's nothing to be. And I'm using the best of what I've got of my existence to be here with all of you, because you're all of me. And I can't imagine a better way to spend eternity. But it's genuine because of acceptance, because it's not a concept, because it's a recognition that is settling in. And so I'm relaxing into it, because what is there to fight in a recognition? Can't avoid it forever, especially if it's not something that you want to recognize. That's the thing. If all of a sudden letting go, you're like, and over time, you're just like, okay, fine. Because you see it. You see more and more of why you can. And that question of, can I really let go, becomes a leap of faith.
Yeah, and that was well said. The difference between willingness implies this fucking idea that, like, I'm willing to be, Andrew's willing to be, oh yeah, I'll do that for you guys. Yeah, I'm willing. It's like, fuck that. You're already it, fucker. Like, Jesus Christ, you're not getting to it. You're not like doing anything. You're recognizing what you're already doing. You're not doing additional. You're just letting go of the idea that this is all that you're doing. Like, the idea that this is all that you're doing. That's all that it is. Like, you're already fucking everything. You're just keeping that at bay. You're just doing everything you can to keep it at bay. So the willingness isn't, it's like implies that it's not already happening. So it's not willingness at all. It's just, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And relax. And like, that's the best you can do. That's the best we got. As soon as you start trying to do shit, which is like what everyone's fucking, what all this shit's built on, which is why it makes sense that it's such a component of this, I don't know, happening process, conversation. I feel weird even saying any of those things, is trying to get it across. Like, we feel like we have to try to exist, right? To maintain my idea of myself, I have to be trying all the time. If I stop trying, then what the fuck am I? What the fuck will I be?
Everything.
Exactly.
That's the funniest thing. But we never take enough time to actually get an appreciation of what that is, because we keep trying to make it bigger than it is, not recognizing the depth of what's already happening. Right? That's all it is. We get caught up and we don't recognize how much we've gotten caught up because we're stressed about it. And so we can't have a recognition about relaxation when we're stressed. And that's why drugs are so important. You know, frankly, I mean, that's the entire reason that the experience of psychedelics is so transformational, is the fact that all of a sudden it takes all of that stress and it just kicks your feet out from underneath you and says, lie the fuck down. All right. And it reminds you that there's an alternate state of mind. That's why cannabis is useful, right? Is it reminds you don't always have to feel like you're in control. And then you take that with you when you're not on cannabis, if you're learning, or you just keep going, cannabis relaxes me. And it's like, doesn't have to. You can fight that shit. Fuck. You can white knuckle your way through cannabis and vomit and go through all of that. You really can. It doesn't do it for you. You have to be willing. And most of us are. We just don't recognize that because we're so caught up. That's all it is. And that's why it's so important for you to just be. So important for you to just be on your path, because all people are going to recognize is that they can do the same. That's why your gummy videos are so inspiring to people, because not only are you out there being vulnerable, testing out a new mentality, something that most people convince themselves is terrifying. I can't possibly get that high. Who would I be? I might lose control. It's like, you might actually find out who you are without the illusion of control. And that's what you're scared of. Right. And so you're out there running, facing yourself, having a great time and communicating what it is you're going through. And people look at that and they see it as inspiring, more inspiring than anything else that we might be saying, simply because it reminds them that they can relax a little because you're relaxing a little. That's the whole fucking point. This has been a great episode. We're going to continue on Patreon in about 15 minutes. Patreon.com/dualistic unity. Do join us. There's a 7-day free trial available. Fucking awesome conversation, man.
This has been a blast. Yeah, that the video made out of that last one on 5, that's gonna be whatever you just said times a lot. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm excited to chat with everyone on Patreon in a bit, and we'll talk to you soon.